Well, do I say good evening, freedom fighters and Alberta patriots, or is it good afternoon? It's kind of amazing here in southern Alberta. If this was December 22nd, right now it would be dark out, and we'd think that it's the end of the day and have to be inside and getting warmed up and whatnot. But here it is, into the 18th of February, and it's amazing how fast our days extend, and pretty soon here we'll be going to daylight savings time once again. But anyways, today's subject: drunk with power. And I found it quite amazing to me to be around these individuals that got elected and were part of government um, after they got elected, and there truly was a change in their behavior. I'm not a drinker, but I have friends that are drinkers, and it is amazing to see how people change their behavior and who they are when they become intoxicated. And I can tell you from personal experience that getting elected and becoming part of cabinet and government is almost every bit as intoxicating, or maybe more, than my friends that I'm around, and if they just have one or two drinks. And then some of them, though, go overboard and they lose complete control of their faculties and don't know where they are or what they've done. And sometimes politicians seem to be that way too, and it gets into an absolute wreck. And I actually meant, and I just remembered now, I was going to get a little picture of the carnage that a drunk driver can cause. And when they're in there drinking and enjoying themselves and feeling good, they don't think they're going to hurt anybody, and everything is safe, everything is fine. But the number of lives have been altered because of drunk drivers. We've got organizations like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. I've met many individuals that have had their lives altered and changed because of accidents with drunk drivers. And what I want to talk about today, though, is a number of people that I'm running into that their lives are being changed, alters, people that have lost loved ones because of the drunken power abuse used by our government and our bureaucrats, especially talking about COVID-19 lockdowns. Um, we live in the information age, is what they talk about. But I often say that no, we actually live in the age of misinformation. And too many people get and hear the problem um, of receiving information and thinking that this has got to be true. There was a individual that was really mocking an elected individual who says, "Well, I trust all of this. The government has said so." It was a elderly gentleman from Britain that I watched this week, and his concerns with the lockdown and what it's doing. And anyways, it is an age of misinformation, and we've got to be able to maneuver through and get that information in order to preserve our freedoms and our safety. And if we fail to do that, we're going to get into that same wreck and carnage that we see from a drunken driver, and it's very difficult in many times to repair the damage that's been done. And again, we have those advertisements, drive responsible. And maybe what it's time to do is to have some more banners up that govern responsibly, because our government, in my never humble enough opinion, is out of control, and they have no idea of the carnage and the problems that they're causing. But I want to go back and talk about some of the interesting things that I was able to do when I was elected. And when I was first elected back in 2004, uh, only one in there, so I didn't have a caucus or anybody else to talk to. Um, but I very quickly realized that there was two great opportunities in which I could actually go and talk to many of the ministers. The first one being is that when we're passing legislation, we have first reading, second reading, committee of the whole, and then third reading. And there's something very interesting about the committee of the whole that I want to share with you a little bit tonight. And two things, actually. First of all, when you go into the committee of the whole, you actually get to take off your jacket. And so we're going to take off the jacket tonight because we're now in the committee of the whole. And that was always nice because we don't have air conditioning in the legislature that works very good. And it got quite hot in there during the daytime. And so we all enjoyed getting to committee of the whole. But the more important thing about committee of the whole is that we actually get to go and sit anywhere that you have the audacity to go to sit. Of course, not in the speaker's chair, but there's always somebody sitting there. But if the premier, for whatever reason, and I only remember one time when the premier was ever there in the committee of the whole, that they all have assignments, and the House leader makes them rotate, and there always has to be so many ministers and so many MLAs in there, and the government, always has to make sure that they have a majority, so that if all of the opposition MLAs were in there, and if there was 27 of us, well, then the government made sure that there was 28 on the other side, so that they were never outnumbered and couldn't be lost in a vote. But it's great because you could actually go over and I could sit beside the justice minister, the ag minister, or whoever. And there were several times where I would go over and sit beside a minister, and I literally would take my stack of 10 inches high of research that I was doing, and I'd go over and I'd ask them, won't use any names, but we'll just say, oh, Doug, I don't understand this policy and why you're wanting to do this. And I've done all this research, could you please enlighten me on why we're doing this? And so I had great discussions with the ministers in committee of the whole and always looked forward to that. And it was enlightening. But the most important thing about the committee of the whole, and I did this twice while I was in there, is that there's something that really bothers me when the MLA say there's nothing that we can do. Well, no, we don't have the majority. And it doesn't take very many. It actually only takes two. Because come committee of the whole, that's the only time where you can keep talking and talking and talking and talking, and basically you can stonewall the government from moving on and out of committee of the whole. And twice I stayed up all night and into the next morning with one other individual, and we debated all night. The most important time was when the government was changing the Education Act and they were stripping away parental rights. And myself and boy, anyways, we were able to stay up all night and debate that. And the government just always figured that, well, they're going to get tired, they're going to quit. And we were able to go all night. And long story short, because it was at the end of the session and they weren't able to change the what would I say? They were wanting to pass this final bill, this education bill, before the summer break and be done. And so they brought it in late so there wouldn't be a bunch of debate. And we just thought and knew that this was wrong. And so we debated it all night and into the next day and wouldn't let it out of the committee of the whole. So they couldn't bring it back for third reading. And the government, they caved on it and they stopped that. And they went out through the summer, and come fall when they came back, they put parental rights back into the Education Act. But when you hear MLAs say there's nothing that we can do, we can't stop this, it's not really true. And especially if you have 4 or 6 MLAs that are dedicated to stopping something, they can. And so when you hear MLAs say there's nothing we can do, it's not true. Come committee of the whole, that's where you can stop legislation from passing, because you can just refuse to let it pass and keep talking about it. But anyways, so those are some important things to realize, that how do you stop the drunken behavior of government and this abuse of power when they want to pass legislation. And so, yes, I'm telling you that the opposition can and should stop it when it's wrong, and it's committee of the whole. But anyways, enough about that story. The other one that I want to talk about, and I'm going to need to get a little drink here, it's dry today. The other opportunity that was a little bit more subtle and interesting, because back in 2005, there were still a lot more smokers than there are today. And actually, I was surprised at how many of the cabinet ministers were smokers, including the finance minister, the ag minister, the transportation minister. There was a lot of them that they were smokers. And so couldn't smoke in the building, and so they went out back, and you have the opposition side and the government side in the house, but we go out past the speaker's chairs and out the back, and then there's kind of a common area there where we can talk, and often we'll send a note, say, could you please come talk, and we talk in that common area. But then they go out and they open up the door and they go onto the balcony to smoke. And so I'd always watch the ministers, the ones I'm needing to talk to, and when I see them getting agitated and up, out they'd go and out onto the balcony, and I'd jump up and out I would go. And so there's always opportunity if you're really looking for it and want to get in there as an elected representative and in opposition and being stonewalled. That there's coy ways of getting around that, and I quite enjoyed that, of cornering them and being able to do that. But my point again, though, what I'm trying to bring up here is what do you do and how do you shake somebody that's drunk with power and get them to realize, you know, what is happening here? Because for me, and again, I'm missing my notes here. I got to put that back here. And I'm sorry, not everything organized as good as I should be. For me, this COVID lockdown and what we're seeing happening is way out of control. I can't believe on Ash Wednesday they arrested our pastor James Coates. And maybe you want to put up that picture, David, of James. And okay, so on Wednesday he was arrested, and again I find it quite interesting how many people are on the government side and saying, oh, we we just can't allow this, you know, we've got to stop this, and they're negative towards him, they're negative towards church organizations, and many churches are obeying the rules right now, and they're wearing their masks, and they're reducing the attendance down to 15%. That's good, David, you can take that down now if you want. And they're trying to do the best they can. But the bottom line is that 85% of the people who may be wanting to attend church are doing so, are not able to do so. And even in our own church, and this church of Pastor Coates is doing it, going online. But he gives you should go look up his February 14th preaching, because it's a powerful sermon that he taught that day, and I've actually listened to it twice, and I'll probably listen to it for a third time, because he talks about a lot of truths in there, and the importance of people being free to worship and free to assemble and to be free to do what we think is right. And so going back to this idea of the age of information or misinformation, I think that the biggest long-term damage that we're going to do is the fear mongering and the fear that's been instilled in people of getting COVID and dying. And every day when I'm out and meeting people, it's amazing to see the different reactions of different individuals, and how paranoid some are, and others are angry and defiant and not wanting to follow these things. And where's the balance? How do we decide what's right and what's wrong? And the bottom line is that, first of all, I personally believe that every individual is born free and has property in their own selves, and should have that freedom to choose on how they want to live, and the type of lifestyle they want to live, so long as it's not hurting someone else. But our Canadian Constitution, that isn't entrenched in there. It's not enshrined, and there's two real problems with it. And I've talked about this before. One is the tyranny of the majority, that if they don't want something, they can vote and impose it on us. And that's a real problem. And the only way we can do that is with a new constitution that actually enshrines individuals, their life, their freedom, and their property, and their pursuit of happiness. And if we don't have that in there, it's a problem. But the other thing that for me that needs to be enshrined in a constitution is accountability. And that accountability is through recall. And I just don't think that there's a more sobering effect on elected people than the fact that if we're upset, we can go out and start collecting signatures to fire them. They sober up really quick, and all of a sudden they can listen, and they have time for you to address the problem. And again, we're being promised right now by our premier that, oh, recall's coming in this spring, it'll be there. I sure hope that it's coming in at a level that's achievable, and not some ridiculous high watermark in a very short time period, because that's the type of games they could play. I hope they don't. I hope, for me, it's always been quite simple. If there was 10,000 voters, that 10,000 people voted, it would take 50% plus one, or 5,001 signatures to fire somebody. If it was 20,000, then it would take 10,001 signatures. And I would give it, 120 days in order for people to go out and to collect those signatures. But anyways, those are important things in order to sober up our elected representatives and listen to us. And right now, we have a real problem with this province-wide lockdown. Talking to some individuals up in northwestern Alberta, where they just have virtually very, very few cases, if not zero cases, and yet they're locked down, and the people are frustrated. And actually, next week, I'm going to have an individual on from Peace River that's going to go over some of these problems that they're having in their area with policemen that are literally going around into the grocery stores, into facilities, handing out their cards and saying, hey, if you see somebody without a mask on, you call me. But anyways, we'll save those stories for next week. It's just alarming how drunken our police are in wanting to abuse some of that power. And so, David, maybe I would like to show that video right now, that hopefully you've got it shortened down, of an individual. And again, I'll talk a little bit about this balance and the importance of talking to both sides. But let's watch this little video here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
He's not even doing. You guys.
You're under arrest. Do as you're told.
I didn't do anything.
Don't care. Do as you're told.
No, this officer was speeding, and we simply asked him,
He's going to a
get over my fucking vehicle.
You are also getting arrested. You know.
How? This, what did I do? Standing here.
Get
You guys are ridiculous.
on the ground. On the ground. Get on the ground.
You guys kidding me? The fuck is wrong?
Whoops, wish that was edited a little bit quicker there. I apologize for the foul language there, but I don't apologize for showing the police brutality and their determination in order to arrest somebody. And he asked, this is a fairly long video, but they asked over and over. And again, I don't know both sides of the story, but I'm telling you, we've got police that are out of control. And worse than that, we have bureaucrats and senior government officials who are turning our police against our people. They're supposed to be peace officers. They're supposed to be securing the safety. And according to this individual, this first one, and I kind of wanted to show that at the start of the video, there's just one policeman there. And he was having zero success in trying to harm this guy. He's both hands on his arms, trying to twist him and trying to trip him. And this guy just kept standing there and say, why are you doing this to me? What is going on? What did I do? And he says, you're under arrest. For what? For what? And he wouldn't say. And according to these individuals, this guy was speeding. When they got to a stop sign or something, they rolled down their window or something, I don't know what, and they asked him, why are you speeding? Or whether they went in, I don't know. But anyways, that from according to them, this is what got the police officer so upset, and he was going to arrest this individual. But we don't have a judicial system anymore. We have a legal system, and again, this power is intoxicating. They're drunk with it, and they're abusing it. And we need a right to have access. The one individual from the Whistle Stop Cafe, to my understanding, the government said that they recognized his right to open, but I shouldn't comment on that yet. I need to read more. But the bottom line, that's the first case I know that's actually got in front of a judge and able to ask their case and start to defend it with the Constitution. But boy, we've got a lot coming up, and it's a problem that this drunkenness, and it's I'm sorry, there's just too much power to go around, and there's too many people that are intoxicated with that. And to go back, I guess I want to talk about the problem of the decision on the lockdown and why the premier seems so bound and determined to do it province-wide. It's not that they can focus where there's a problem, it's province-wide. But I have to ask the question, and again, when we were in caucus, we'd often bring in experts to talk on different subjects, whether it's power transmission lines, might be traffic, might be land use, might be even on coal development or atomic energy. We had Bruce Power come out and give us some presentations on whether or not we should have atomic energy in the province. But the point is that caucus brings in lots of people. But what I really found, and again, going back to talking about the committee of the whole, when I'd go over there with my stacks of research and I start asking questions, and they'd look at me like I was crazy, like you read that stuff, you go through that. And more often than not, what I got from the ministers, and there was the exceptions to the rules with some exceptional ministers that took it serious and read and understood, but more often than not, they would just say, well, Paul, like my deputy minister or this individual, my researcher, he gave me this, and I just read off of this, here it is. This is the gospel truth. Like, how could there be anything but the truth coming from there? And so I'd present, well, maybe you should look at this report. And when I could get them to read some of them, they often they'd say, like, where did you get this from? And I'd say, well, like, don't you do any research on both sides? Well, we tell our people to do the research and they bring it to us. But what government officials really lack is doing both sides of the story, to be that judge, to go to the so-called victim and to go to the perpetrator, hear both sides of the story. It's very enlightening and it's amazing, and even have the third person to hear the story. But so the problem with these individuals, and I want to say with our government UCP caucus, is I don't know that they've, maybe they have, but I don't know that they've listened to any of the other side of the story. And whether they're just being fed the propaganda that how terrible COVID is, how dangerous COVID is, how life-threatening it is, and if you're not wearing a mask, you're a murderer who's walking around trying to kill people. And there's three individuals that I would love for the UCP caucus to bring in. The first one is Dr. Ari Jaffe. And do we have a little picture there that we can show of Dr. Ari Jaffe and his research that the Macdonald-Laurier Institute was following up? Do we have that one, Dave? Okay, rethinking the lockdowns. This was put out back in December. And Dr. Jaffe there talks that, at first he was all for it. The lockdowns are important. All of this stuff that they're doing is important. Sorry, I need another drink there, off screen even. But I would love to know how many of the MLAs have read these reports. Okay, thank you, David. And have done the research to know what's the other side of the story saying. And I've been quite outspoken, on repurposed drugs that have been approved and whether we should be doing some research. But I don't know that they're following or listening to any of this. Maybe they are, but I don't think so. Dr. Roger Hodgkinson, another one who spoke at Edmonton City Council. He's right now being investigated by the College of Physicians, which again, I think is an absolute joke. If these people are professionals and they're doing their research and they want to practice something, that's why they're professionals and why they're accredited. And to have the College of Physicians coming down hard on doctors who might want to prescribe ivermectin or hydrochloroquine for these COVID patients and prohibiting that, I think is criminal. But anyways, they're in there. Our own Dr. Dennis Modry here, all of these are Alberta doctors, and I don't know, yeah, thank you. Dr. Roger Hodgkinson and Dr. Dennis Modry, both have put out some very good papers and research on saying that, look, you need to reconsider these lockdowns. They're not in the best interest. And have they listened? Have they read these things? I mean, Dr. Dennis Modry put his paper out, as Dr. Jaffe did. And the question is, are our MLAs reading these things? Thank you, David. And if not, why not? And there are elected representatives. It's their job, it's their duty to look at both sides of the story and then react appropriately. But what it goes back to is our opportunity and our freedoms. Are they going to be protected? And those people that are so paranoid and convinced that COVID-19 is the worst thing since the Spanish flu, And yet again, when we look at the numbers for 2019, and the death rates have actually gone down. If you look at 2015, 16, 17, 18, and then 19, there was no pandemic when it comes to deaths. And it's quite disgusting to see that the deaths by COVID are up dramatically in the numbers that they give. But for the first time ever, that we're seeing the charts going down, that heart attacks, have always been going up. Lung cancer, everything, all of these things are going up with our population, but this year there's a drop. And I said, are you kidding me? Like, heart attacks are down, strokes are down. No, they're not. They're up there, but they're passing all this off and doing the fear mongering with the COVID-19 to keep us locked down. And again, I'll bring this up briefly, but you have to ask the reasons why. Well, there's no question in my mind. Our Prime Minister has said it. The agenda's out there. It's a global agenda. They want to build back better. They want a great reset. They want to destroy our economy. They want to destroy our way of life. And they want us to be dependent on government and to be free. And I guess I want to tell one more story here about being free. That wild hogs, if you go to Australia or down to Texas or other places, can become a real problem. They're a rodent, and it's very difficult to eradicate them once they're out in the wild. And but the best way that they do to help reduce the number of wild hogs is they actually go out and they set up a trough, and they give free feed in that trough, and they put it out there and they leave. And over a time period, more and more hogs get to realize that feed is coming out, and they don't need to do anything and go out foraging and causing a lot of problems. There's the free feed. And after they've got them so that the herd is coming and eating, they'll put up one fence behind that trough. And at first it's interesting. Some of the cannier ones they're skeptical of this, and they think this is a bad deal. And it takes a week before they become comfortable with it, and everybody in the herd is back eating the free food. And so then you go up and you put up a second fence and you go through it, and then the third fence, and then the fourth fence with a one-way gate that they have to push through to get in to eat. And long story short, that they're all fighting for their free food, and they get in there and then they're trapped, and then they can be hauled out and processed or whatever it is that they want to do. But it's the same thing with people, that when we get free handouts and we keep coming back to the trough and getting those handouts and give up our livelihood, our hope and everything else, and just think, well, this is great. We got this basic living allowance that's coming in every week. We don't need to fight for freedom. They're looking after us. When they get enough of us and they've destroyed the economy and they close the gate, that there's no going back for freedom. It's too late. If they've destroyed our economy like they're set out to do, and we don't stand up and say no now and quit going to the trough, we're going to lose. And that's really what I'm talking about today is how do we stop this drunken behavior, that what they're doing, the brutality that they're doing, the charges that they're doing, whether it's a pastor, whether it's a driver, whether it's a restaurant owner, the intimidation that they continue to put on Albertans, for me, is categorically wrong. Those people that are fearful, they have a right to stay home. But those that are the brave and the free, they should be allowed to go out and carry on life as normal and build up that herd immunity. And so, again, I want to circle back to this drunken behavior, this intoxicating substance of power and what it's doing, and the fact that we need to bring this to an end. And the way we do that, and we'll continue to urge Premier Kenney, is to bring in recall and to be able to start recalling these MLAs. And especially in rural Alberta, we don't have a COVID problem, and there's no reason to be shutting down businesses because they have a problem in some sector of the city. And so hope that you'll continue to be encouraged on that and realize that recall is one of those fundamental principles that we need to bring back to Alberta. It was here for a short period, but got removed. And again, it's another important thing to realize is that if we pass recall in this fall's election, it's not good enough, Premier Kenney, to just pass legislation this spring and say we have recall. You need to let Albertans vote on it in our fall referendum, so that if you get a little bit nervous and decides next spring that, oh my goodness, they're going to recall some of us and withdraw that legislation, if it's passed by the people and we say we want that accountability and recall, it's pretty much a precedent in British parliamentary system that the only way to repeal that is through another referendum. And I think one of the saddest things in Alberta's history is when Premier Klein passed legislation that we had to balance our budget, and the work that he did in order to do that. And he didn't pass that, though, and didn't ask the people in a referendum. And I was in the House when Premier Stelmach got rid of that balanced budget legislation. And first it just started with infrastructure. Well, just so we can do some extra infrastructure after they'd spent billions of dollars. But anyways, it's always that slippery slope. And once you're on that slippery slope, it's pretty much impossible to get back off unless you have constitutional parameters in place, or at least it's been passed through a referendum of the people. But David, I think let's do we have some good questions that people have asked, or some comments, or anything that I need to address? I'll sneak a little drink here to see if he's brought up any that. No questions or comments? This is really tough when you're not in the same studio and you can't see, and he's oh, here we've got some. When are you and other independent parties going to get your act together? Well, we're trying to get our act together. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. COVID is certainly causing us problems. That's why I've switched what I would normally be doing. If it was a normal world, I'd be out doing a town hall 2 or 3 nights a week, meeting people face to face, getting their questions. Have you gone to our website, wildrose.party? I think we've got our act together there. We've done thousands and thousands of hours of work. Right now, we're on a project on what would I say, a scope, full scope program on what we need to do. And just on that one alone, we've put in over 1,000 hours of volunteer hours of the board and whatnot. So we're working very hard to get our act together. Is that the toughest question we got, David, or are there any more that are coming up? Okay, Captain Carter. Well, thank you. Hey, Paul, what if corporations decide to use media as tools to promote anti-Wild Rose campaign in sense that if Wild Rose wins in 2023, they will leave Alberta? In the UK, they use Project Fear. Well, that's always a problem, Captain Carter, that the fear mongering and what goes on will be there. But bottom line is that we will be showing the benefits of a sovereign Alberta. And, there's 2 or 3 really big ones. Number one, for me, is that the taxation. We cannot afford to keep paying the billions and billions of dollars to Ottawa every year, and they're shutting down our industry. Basically, shutting down our economy, the lockdowns, and are shutting down our industry, but yet they want to continue taxing us. They're bent on us becoming a have-not province. And so if it'll be a challenge, but when we win in 2023 and form government, we'll be putting our house in order. First and foremost, we'll be collecting all of the taxes, putting that into a trust so that we have leverage with Ottawa. Maybe is actually first and foremost, though, is that we'll have our own provincial police force. And when the government wants to take away our property and pass edicts and say this is bad or that's bad, we here in Alberta will be the judges of that, and we'll make that decision. We have a major problem with pension plans here in this country, and Alberta, though, is contributing a major amount in the tune of $2 or $3 billion more every year leaves Alberta to the Canada Pension Plan than Albertans receive. And so we can actually enhance the benefits, reduce the premiums, and benefit all Albertans and start to grow an actual pension fund like the Ontario's Teachers Fund and the Quebec Pension Plan, and have billions of dollars that can be invested here or other good investments. But we will be laying out all of the pros and the cons, and so much to win. And will there be some short-term pain? There may be. Does there have to be? No, I don't think so. And this can be an amiable separation that doesn't have to be dirty and nasty and harmful like we see so often in a divorce where the two just want to hurt each other. We have no intentions to do that, and I think that it can be very amiable, but it's a good question. And when we form government and start discussing these things with Ottawa and our provinces beside us, we'll be very cognizant of their feelings. But bottom line, the abuse is going to stop. We're not going to have taxation that is destroying our economy. We're not going to allow them to tell us what we can and can't do in our environment. I mean, that's another major problem. We have outstanding environmental legislation, human rights legislation, labor legislation, and we don't need Ottawa telling us how to run and look after our province. We know how to do that. And so for me, it's just a no-brainer. You look at the two sides, again, the balance, what are the pros, what are the cons? And there's just so many pros that in order to survive and to be able to pass on a future for our children and grandchildren, we need to be a sovereign nation, in my opinion. But the nice thing is with the Wild Rose is that we're all about good government. We want to fix our health care. We want to enhance our education. We actually want a judicial system that's going to be a justice system to where people are told why they're being charged and where they can get a lawyer. They're not detained when they get off an airplane and a husband and a wife split for arbitrary reasons that, well, you're okay, but you're not. You're coming to us with quarantine and you're going to pay thousands of dollars. And it's not good enough that our premier says, oh, no, we'll cover that. No, Ottawa and your federal bureaucrats, let's kick them and slam the door shut on them on their way out. They have no right being here. Healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction, but we need a government that's going to stand up and protect Albertans. And we Wild Rosers are passionate about that. And we hope that each and every one of you will become passionate about that you'll sign up, you'll buy a membership, that you can help by donating. But most important, that you'll talk to your friends. It's by word of mouth is the most important way for us to grow our membership and to make people aware of who we are, what we are, and where we want to go. But excellent questions, and we'll battle that as they come up. Is there another one there, David? Are we collaborating with the Maverick Party? I've met with Jay Hill a couple of times. It's been a long time. I'm supportive of what they're wanting to send MPs that actually represent us. I'm sure that each and every one of you realize that our MPs go down to Ottawa, and then whether it's O'Toole or Scheer or even our own Prime Minister from here, Harper, they have a caucus whip, and anybody who speaks out against anything for the benefit where they might lose a vote in Quebec or Ontario or in the East, that whip cracks, and it cracks hard. I totally agree with the idea that there's no sense in us sending out any MPs that are part of a government caucus because all they are is a vote against us. And we need to send people like the Maverick Party out there that their sole purpose is to stand up for Westerners and to stop the abuse. But anyways, we certainly encourage people to get involved, and I'll be very involved if there's a federal election on seeing that we don't send a bunch of puppets down to support O'Toole and his desire to support the Paris Accord and saying that, oh, this is the way we got to go. We got to shut down. And again, they don't say you have to shut down the oil and gas industry, but they certainly put caps on it. And that's another whole discussion that just doesn't carry water. But anyways, appreciate that question. And yes, we need to send out good representatives down east, but our goal is for a sovereign Alberta. How many Wild Rose candidates are currently in Alberta? Well, we have no nominated candidates. We certainly, in my opinion, and if I'm fortunate enough to win the leadership race, which will be happening here this summer or sooner, I don't know when the board will call that. I'm a big believer that the nomination race is probably the second most important election that our province has, the most important being on provincial election day. But I've always said to people who said they want to run and they're riding, whatever, I says, well, that's great. It really bothers me when you have leadership oversight, and I say, well, actually, I don't like Dave. I'm going to take John, and you just need to stand down. We're not going to sign your nomination papers. I'm a big believer in a process, and the process for me is that when a constituency association has 500 members and has $5,000 in the bank, those people are serious about finding a candidate that they want to nominate. And then they can have an open nomination. And of course, we always vet our candidates to make sure that they don't have, backgrounds that are nefarious and inappropriate for public office. But boy, we want an open and competitive free run competition to see who gets nominated and who gets to represent each and every constituency in this province. But anyways, hope that answered your question. Do we have another one, David? Paul, how do we actually start separation? I hear about it all the time, but I'd like more details. Well, thank you, Sharon. Well, the first thing that we have to do is form government. We need to win 2023. How do we do that? Well, we need to build CAs. We need to have the memberships. We need to have the donations. We're up against two juggernauts that are going to spend millions and millions of dollars. Last year, the NDP raised, I think, about a little over 5 million, and UCP, 3.8 million or something like that. And so it takes money to get the brochures, to get the signs, to do the advertisement, all of that. But the way you do it, like I say, first of all, you need to form government. I personally believe the next thing is putting our house in order. We need to collect all the taxes here by Albertans for Albertans. We need to have our own police force. We need our own pension plan, our own employment insurance. We need to have our own immigration policy. And most important, because of the current oversight of Ottawa, we need to have our own environmental act and allow us to do those things. And then we have some leverage on trying to negotiate some pipelines to Tidewater. And I love the movie Sleeping with the Enemy, and Julia Roberts goes through, my memory serves me right, like 2 years of preparation. She learns how to swim. She's doing all this stuff to prepare to get out there. And in the analogy, that's what we need to do. We need to put our house in order. I often use the analogy that two people have a end of marriage fight, and the one individual leaves out the front door, slams, and calls their sister and gets picked up, or their brother, or whoever it is, goes to their house to live. And the next week they go to the court saying that I want custody of my kids. This is wrong. My spouse is, I shouldn't say she, I'm a he, so it'd be a she. But anyways, it's a broken, dysfunctional relationship, and I want custody of my kids. And the judge asks, well, where are you living? Well, I'm with my sister right now. Well, where's your job? Well, actually, I don't have a job right now. Well, where's your vehicle? Well, I don't have a vehicle. You need to put our affairs in order. And that's why I talk about those 6 major things, that we need our police force. We need to have our revenue agency, employment insurance, pension plan, environmental act. And I'm missing one right now. But anyways, we need to put our house in order. And then because we're in order and we have that independence, and we're not handing our lunch money down to Ottawa every year and then begging for some to get back, we actually have it, and we'll focus at where we need to do it. And we can show Albertans that look, this is a good, stable situation. There's lots of benefits that we can do by pulling the lever and the trigger and becoming sovereign. And again, at that point, we'll have a referendum for the people to decide whether or not they want to stay in Canada or whether they want to leave. And the important thing for those, and I say the Wild Rose is actually the best thing. If you're a loyalist and you want to stay in Canada, the only way that's going to happen is if you actually have a government that stands up and Ottawa starts to respect us. And they're not going to do that with the current system, whether it's the NDP or whether it's the UCP. They're nationalists, and they don't have to accommodate anything because of the Constitution. But if we're in power and we put our house in order, maybe Albertans will say, well, gosh, you know what? We're actually happy here and we don't want to separate. I hope that wouldn't be the case, but that's the only way I see that the loyalists wanting to win. But the fact of the matter is that it's not okay. There's $1 trillion debt. We have people of a different mindset out east. They want to be part of a global reset. They want socialism. They want handouts from the government. And that's just not Albertans or the Alberta way. And we will realize that, that this is a broken, dysfunctional relationship. And we need to get out, because we're not going to have our partner continue to run up $1 trillion debts and then we having to pay for that. But anyways, I hope that kind of answers, that's kind of short, but this is my, all right, am I doing Alive and Honest tonight? This is live, this is honest, and our schedule has jumped around so much because it's so chaotic, and I hope that people are okay with that. The nice thing is that, once this is recorded, people can listen to it when they want. I'm looking at changing things up here in a couple of weeks, where maybe we can start doing some Zooms where people can talk, and we'll maybe do some smaller forums, something that's a little bit more open discussion than what we have. But this is the live and honest for today. But thanks for the questions. I ran for the FCP in the Peace River riding last election. Can you tell me when the parties merged, what changes were made to the policy? Well, thanks, Connie, for having the courage to run. A lot of people are afraid to run for public office, and so I commend you for that. I think many times that people don't realize, at least for me, and why I've run in the past, is to give people a choice. Because right now, to me, there's no choice to vote for the UCP or the NDP, but we, the Wild Rose, have choice. I really don't know and haven't read all of the policies of the old Freedom Conservative Party, but they're based on freedom. I would actually invite you to go to our website, wildrose.party. Our information is all up there. We merged on the 29th of June this year, or last year. We're in a new year, 2019, 2020. The 29th of June is when the two parties merged, Wexit and the Freedom Conservative Party. They put a lot of time into bringing the policies up to date and enhancing them. But the best way is for you to go to our website, wildrose.party, click on, I think it's policies, but anyways, across the top at the banner, you'll be able to find it. And there's a lot of information there that you know exactly who we are, what we're trying to do, and how we're going to do it. But thanks for that question. Nancy, have you brought forth your End the Lockdown survey to the Alberta government? Are you seeing any success in more MLAs demanding a different approach to managing the virus? Well, thank you, Nancy. We send it forward just in the sense of emails and whatnot, but I can actually tell you, and maybe I shouldn't, but I spoke with a government backbench MLA this morning, and trying to encourage him on what they might do. It was interesting because I never got any responses back. I sent a letter out on the 23rd of December to all the UCP MLAs, telling them to end the lockdown and to pass recall legislation. I sent another one out after our AWOL MLAs got back, and that big blow up. And I says, it's time that the MLAs go to Premier Kenney and say, look, we don't accept these lockdowns anymore, and we're going to sit as independent MLAs until you do it. And I asked them, well, did you get those two letters? Because I only had one call me out of the 60 some of them, and instead that they got it. They didn't comment on it. But anyways, I don't really know or remember. We get a lot of mail. I says, well, if you don't mind, just search Paul Hinman and tell me whether you got it. And okay. Anyways, he searched on his whether he's at his office or on his phone, I don't know. But anyways, he found both letters. So I was encouraged that it got there. But the bottom line is that we send those things. We'll keep encouraging them. But I don't know that we're going to have any effect on them. But that's why, to me, join the Wild Rose, talk to other people. Let's build our membership. Let's build our war chest. That's what'll move them. Every quarter, they look at our donation lists. It has a huge impact on them to see, how much are we getting. We're down in the kindergarten league. We started off with 5,000, then to 30,000, and to 70,000. And it's very appreciated, but we need a lot more to go into an election. But anyways, appreciate that question, and we'll keep putting pressure on there. Are there Wild Rose bumper stickers? Gene, we don't have those yet. We keep talking about setting some up. and we're getting very close to making some purchases and having some information for people to hand out and to have some bumper stickers and other things. But thanks for asking, because I'll put that back on the list for the board. We need to start getting that stuff out, and it would be helpful in raising some money too if people donated to do those things. But excellent question. Is there another one? What is Wild Rose plans for the First Nations as far as separations? Well, that is a big question, and we talk about it all the time. And my first response to you, Connie, is to say, why do the Wild Rose people want to separate from Canada? Why do we want to be a sovereign nation? Why do we want our independence? It's because of a dysfunctional relationship. And when I look at the problems we have, and then I compare them to the First Nations, I just think, wow, why would they want to stay and be part of such a broken, dysfunctional relationship? In a sovereign Alberta, again, with COVID, it's hard to get out and to talk to many of them. I've spoken to a few Indigenous First Nation people one-on-one. At first, they're very defensive. Oh, we can't have anything to do with that. We can't be a new nation. And then when I talk, well, wouldn't you like to own your own property? Wouldn't you like to have control, of your resources? Wouldn't you like to have those things and be a free nation? And I think we have a lot to offer. Perhaps I'm a little bit naive, but I think that Albertans can vote, and we can vote for sovereignty, like get the Alberta government in place in 2023. And at that point, they'll realize that things are serious, that we can sit down and have some talks. But I think if they want to sit back and watch, for a couple of years as we put our house in order and say, well, we'll watch and see. But there's nothing better than actually, going forward and showing what the benefits are, and to be one country, one people, and one law. And not the Indian Act that's so oppressive and stopping them. But it's something that we'll have to do a lot of consultation with and reach out to them. But I personally think that they, like us, are going to be far better off in a sovereign Alberta. But excellent question, and it's something that's on the minds of a lot of people, including the First Nations. But is there another question then, Dave? Okay, well, we've gone for 55 minutes, and I really appreciate having this time with each and every one of you. And let's remember that we need to do something about this government that's drunk with power. And again, you can keep going in there and sending the emails, and I will actually get a new page set up where people can sign up, and we can address more personally, I guess. And I'm very concerned about the censorship that's going on, and our problems of reaching out to people. And so, if you want to go to wildrose.party and go to paulhinman.com, we'll get some sign up pages, and we'll be there to be able to communicate back and forth. But this is a huge task we're taking on. It's not going to be easy, but I see it absolutely rewarding. I see this as a pay it forward to our children and grandchildren. And so I ask you to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your co-workers. Status quo is unacceptable. We can't continue to have Ottawa calling the shots and passing legislation and shutting down our industry and thinking that we're going to have a future, to think that we can have this great reset and that we can own nothing and be happy. It's just a complete facade. And you can look around the world at all the places. The best case to look at is Venezuela, to see where they've gone from riches to rags. And it doesn't work. And we need to educate people. So please go to our website, keep sending in the emails, the phone calls. We appreciate the comments. And thank you for the critics. I've been told, not to wear my reading glasses because they cause a lot of glare. And so, yep, that's not good. I was told to please not wear a white shirt anymore because I white out. I usually wear my suit jacket, but we even like those little comments like that on what we can do to make it better. But thanks so much. Take care, and we'll probably see you Monday at 5 o'clock is when I plan to do my next one. But thank you, and have a great weekend.